Circle graphs and pie charts. So this lesson is going to be very calculator heavy, specifically this calculator. If you don't have one of these, you can pick them up usually online or Walmart or Office Depot between $10 and $15. If you need to practice your math test, I would suggest buying one for yourself because this is what the Math GED uses. This is the only calculator you can use on the Math GED. There is a free download somewhere on the classroom, if you look for it, where you can download it, and it's got a free trial, but you have to have a computer to do that. So let's get into it. So there's three different ways that you could possibly see circle graphs. This is the first one. So they've got money written in here. It doesn't have to be money, it can mean any sort of number. So usually when they give you a problem like this, they're going to ask you either what fraction or what percent something is. So let's just start with one. Let's say utilities. So if they ask what fraction that you have in utilities, you would just simply start by making a fraction. The number that they want, which is utilities, is always the top number. That is the part. The bottom is always going to be the total. So to get the total, you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to add these three numbers together. I think 1500, yeah. So you will have a calculator for that. You can punch that in on a calculator if you need to. Now, once you get a fraction made, 350 over 1500, you have to simplify it. If you don't have a calculator, you got to do this the long way. I don't have time to show you that. If you have a calculator. Now, I pushed 350 in before I hit the fraction button. You can hit the fraction button first, doesn't matter. But when you hit the fraction button second, it automatically brings you down to the bottom, so it saves you a step. And 1500. Now, if you needed to type in anything else on the fraction, beside the fraction, notice that it's blinking on the bottom. It would put everything on the bottom, so you always got to hit your over button if you need to do anything else. But if you just hit enter, it will give you the fraction. Now, if you need that to be a percent, you don't have to do this step. You can, but you can just enter 350 over 1500, and then right above the second parentheses in green, it's hard to see on this, the focus. There. It's got an arrow. Anytime you see an arrow on this calculator, it means change. So there's one there. There's a couple up here that I don't think you need to know those. These are in a different lesson. This has to do with fractions. This one down here changes things. I'm going to show you how to use that today. So any triangle means change. So right after that, it has a percent symbol. So that means change to percent. This one over here is also going to be used today. That's if your number is already a percent. So we need a percent. So we need to use that one. So in case you don't know it, whenever you have one of these calculators, if you just start hitting something like a plus or divided by or times, it will bring down this answer that you got into the next line automatically. And so instead of retyping that, if you still have that on your screen, you can just hit the second key to activate all your green buttons. And then you can hit that change to percent, and then see it automatically brings it down to the next line. And you should have this on your screen with the triangle and the percent, and then you just hit enter. Now they're usually going to want you to round this. Almost always one decimal place. And see, it's got the percent all the way down there at the end, so it's telling you that this is a percent. So this is a run-on percent. You might see this written a different way, just in case. You might see it as this. That's the same thing. But usually they want a decimal. I wrote dot. Ignore that dot. So 23 and 1/3% or 23.3%. So let's say they asked you for your spending. So you just put the 250 over, and the bottom number stays the same. If you needed a fraction, it would be 1/6. Second, change to percent. We have another run on. We'll round that one up this time because our second number after our first is a 6. That tells us to round that 6 to a 7. So that one's 16.7%. Now I want you to pause your video and figure out your percent for your car payment and your percent for your utilities, just like we did right here. So you should have put 300 over 1500 and gotten 1/5, which is 20%. If I did my math right. The other one is 350 over 1500. I think that's 7 over 30. Let's check it. Yeah, 7 over 30. Oh, already did that. So ignore everything I just said. Utilities is our first one we did. What one? Oh, we didn't do mortgage. Sorry. If you want to pause your video and do mortgage, or if you already figured out that I was wrong. So, mortgage, you should have put 600 over 1500. I think that's going to be 2/5 or something like that. Yep, 2/5. Change it to a percent, and you get 40%. Now, if you did this correctly, anytime you have a circle graph, once you finish all your percents will always add up to 100%. That's how you know you did it right. Because a circle graph will always have 100%. Can't have more than 100% in a circle, because you only have one circle. If you had more than 100%, you'd have more than one circle. If you had less than 100%, you'd have less than a circle. Okay, that's if you want. That's if they want fractions or percents. A lot of times they will give you percents. Now you need to know a pretty important number for this, and that is your total. You can't do anything with these percents until you have the total. So let's say we're talking about a farm, and these are percents of how they make their money. So let's say it's a pretty decent farm, and they bring in $200,000 in 1 year. So anytime you have a percent, and it's wanting you to find a percent of a number, it's always going to be multiplication. I can't think of a scenario on the GED or many other scenarios, period, where you're ever going to be dividing a percent. I'm sure it happens, but you don't have to worry about dividing a percent on our tests. So you would just take the percent you need. So let's say they asked us to do wheat 25%, and we multiply it times our total, which is 200,000. Again, you need your calculator. Now this time we're going to be using the first parentheses because our number is already a percent. So we're going to hit 25, second key, and then the first parentheses. So you should see a percent without a triangle pop up times 200,000. Make sure you got 5 zeros. Hit enter. Gives us 50,000. Now I want you to pause your video and figure out on your own how much money is made from corn and how much money is made from soybean. So for corn, you should have done 40% times 200,000. Pretty sure that's 80,000. Yeah. And then 35% times 200,000. And that should have been 70,000. If you add all those up, you should get 200,000. So that number should always equal that number, just like it should always be 100% if you got percent. So if you added those, it would be 100%. Okay, so that's if they give you the percent and they need the number of the part, then you have to multiply your percent times your whole. Now they could give you it a third way. They could give it to you in fractions. So let's say we're talking about M&Ms, bag of M&Ms. And let's say you did a experiment and this is what you found once you reduced your fractions. So the first thing you need to know is how many M&Ms come in a normal pack. I have no idea, so I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say 48 M&Ms. Okay, so this is just like the fraction problem. I mean the percent problem, except you're using fractions. So let's say they asked how many red M&Ms come in a bag. You just simply take your fraction instead of your percent and multiply it times your whole. Fraction button 4. Now here's where you got to hit your over button, because if you hit times 48, it's going to put it on the bottom and it's going to be like 1 over like almost 200 or something like that. So hit the over button and then the times. So your calculator should look exactly like that. Hit enter. So 12 are red. Let's say they wanted brown. Now I already know what the calculator is going to say, because I know that 1/8 is half of 1/4, because I know my measurements. So if 1/8 is half of 1/4, then I know I'm going to have half of these. So I'm going to end up with 6. But you can practice putting it on your calculator. Now if you look, you can save yourself some time. If they ask for 2 then that are the same, we already know yellow without even doing the work, because they're both 1/8. So that's going to be 6 as well. So I want you to pause your video and find blue and orange. So blue, you should have done 1/3 times 48. 1/3, 16. Orange was 1/6. Now again, I can do the exact same thing here. I know that 1/6 is half of 1/3 because it's doubled, but you don't have to know that. But once you practice fractions a while, you'll find some tricks, because that number is going to be half of that number. So all these numbers, if you tally them all up, should be 48, which is the same as your total over here. Now, let's go back to this page. Sometimes they're going to want a decimal. It's very rare, but for this worksheet, you'll need to know how to turn these into decimals. So if that's the case, let's say they wanted 7/30 as a, oh, it's an easy one. Let's do 1/5 as a decimal. So you would just enter your 1/5, get out beside it, and then I said we're going to learn this button. This button right here, double arrow, will change any fraction into a decimal and any decimal into a fraction. So if you hit enter, it'll change it to 0.2. So if you needed a decimal, that's the button you would use. Like I said, if you hit it again, it'll change it to a fraction. So if you had a decimal and you needed a fraction, you could just use that button. Then it would change your decimal to a fraction. You can do the same thing with percent. 20%, change it to a fraction, change it to a decimal. So one more thing I was going to tell you is they might use the word or, and that confuses a lot of people. So if they say or, like car or utilities, that means that you're going to be adding them together. So it's kind of like you're adding your chances together, but in this case you're adding your money together. So you look up here at car and utilities, it'd be 300 plus 350, which would be 750 over 1500. You simplify that, the calculator is going to give you 1/2, which is 50%. So if they say how much do you spend on your car or your utilities, they're not wanting them separate. And don't do car first and then utilities second and then try to add them together. That's the most difficult way to do it. Add them together first, put it in a fraction, simplify it. If you need a percent, change it to a percent. Now this is the packet you should do last. The other 3 or 4 packets are easier than this. So this actually says practice test at the top. Now, I didn't have time to check if the answer key is completely correct, but in class we found a few mistakes. Now this uses a few different things that we didn't teach today, but you can figure these out and use the diagram chart for fractions. It also uses a chart right here, and it actually says in the question that it's displayed in a circle graph. This is not a circle graph, but just in case you wanted to know, if you put that in a circle graph, it would look something like this. 220, 8th grade, 120, 6th, and 140, 7th. I don't know why they had a typo. I'm guessing because they changed it and didn't change the wording. This page right here, number 11 through 13, if you want to skip this entire page, you can. This one is nowhere on the GED. Don't waste your time doing it. This one asks you to make a circle graph. This would be good practice if you wanted to try to make a circle graph of your own, but you'll never have to do that on a test. But if you make it, it will help you understand circle graphs a little bit better. This will never be on the GED. It's also very complicated, and it also, we found out, has completely wrong answer key in the back. So they say 82 here, it says 52 here. They say 9% here, it says 8%. They say 15% here, and it says 20% here. So it's a completely different problem. And that is the end of this video.